If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintz.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintz. Thank you for joining. I'm excited to introduce our second guest for this new year in 2023, Ryan Cleaveland. Ryan is based in Chicago and has been in the staffing industry for over 2 decades. Ryan co-founded Spotter Staffing with his best friend, otherwise known as the other Ryan. And they've disrupted this industry and they're doing some good in the process. Today, he's going to tackle some of the tough questions facing hiring managers, including how to handle a rescinded offer of a strategic hire. But first, Ryan, can you please tell us a little bit more about your background before Spotter and then the genesis behind the start of your company and why you started?
Yeah, I can do that. Thanks. I guess first of all, thanks for having me, Arnett. I don't know. Ryan and I, we trade back and forth on who's the other Ryan. So if he was sitting here today, I don't know that he'd love me calling him the other Ryan, but it's all in good fun and fair. Crazy to think that this is already the second one of 2023. I was talking to the team earlier today, and it's amazing that we're 10 days into the first month. It just seems like every day seems to go a little bit faster, but yeah, I appreciate you having me. So I've been in staffing for now a better part of my life. Like you said, over 2 decades. After graduating from Illinois State, I joined a large organization out of Baltimore and spent 15, 16 years of my career there working in recruiting and staffing for organizations in a ton of different industries, manufacturing to architecture, software, primarily in Chicago, but majority of them had presence around the company or country and sometimes globally.
Yeah. You know, Jenny and I have participated throughout the years with an organization called Vistage. And it's amazing in that organization, one of the key topics that always comes up is issues around partners. And, you know, knowing that Ryan is your best friend, and how is it working with best friends in building and starting a business?
Yeah, it's a great question. When Ryan and I decided to do this, there was probably even more questions about whether or not that was a good idea. Ryan and I have known each other for over 20 years. We've done some different business things together, but as you mentioned, our primary relationship is being close friends. I think the best part about being business partners and friends is that our relationship started on trust and honesty and willingness to be open with each other. So that following into the business has created a really good opportunity for us. Definitely seen other partnerships that have started out of friendship and maybe they didn't have that groundwork or that foundation and have, certainly come into their struggles. But Brian and I, we continue to be friends outside of work and give each other what we need when we're.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's jump into this and talk to us a little bit about the role of talent and staffing companies like Spotter. How has it evolved and where do you see it going in the next coming years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's certainly changed in the last few years and probably will continue to change. But staffing, to me, is pretty simple. I think it's about creating opportunity for folks and for companies. I think staffing companies have created flexibility for organizations to hire depending on where they're at in their life cycle and growth, sometimes depending on where the economy's at. And same thing for individuals that are looking for employment. Creates opportunities for individuals that are looking for positions, no matter where they're at in their career and what their goals are in their life. So for me, it's about opportunity. I think if staffing companies are doing what they should be, that's what they're creating.
Yeah. So as we get into 2023 here, and yeah, it's amazing, 10 days have already flown by. What do you think the number one positive prediction for the hiring and recruiting process is in the coming year? Have you got a prediction that you think might jump out at everybody?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, especially with the fluctuations in our market lately and where the economy's going. And everyone's got an opinion on what might happen with the economy and when we're going to take a further dip, if we're going to take a further dip, how long that might be. And a lot of times staffing will follow that. So right now, based on what we know, talent is in demand. And should the economy continue, even at the pace that it's at, that will continue to be the play. Companies are still looking for top talent. They're still looking for great individuals to join their team. I don't see that changing, at least in the next few months, probably into 2024.
Yeah. Is there a number one challenge to HR and staffing organizations today? I mean, is there one thing that you come up against and you go, okay, that's a challenge for us?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly, talent is in demand. And so if you are not taking care of your team, if you're not advocating for your employees, if you're not prioritizing their needs and making sure they're supported, somebody else is probably looking forward to doing that for you. So competition can be difficult. And, if there's a opportunity out there right now, it's certainly for the candidates and for the individuals that are seeking new opportunities. And that's the difficult side of the client side.
In that candidate experience from the time you or a company start recruiting and start talking with the candidates, there's an experience level they have with the organization. And can you share with us any thoughts you have about what are the key elements to a great hiring and onboarding experience for clients today? Is there anything that jumps out at you?
It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for organizations to make impacts early. Experience is a big deal. I think organizations, when they are hiring somebody, an individual is certainly interviewing them as well and trying to make a decision on whether or not they want to join that company or that team, especially in today's world with talent being in demand. So for me, experience starts early and often. It is the first moment that you have an interaction with a candidate or a potential job seeker. And that may be an individual you don't hire for a period of time, or it might be someone you're looking to hire right away. But the first moment that you come into contact with somebody, email, phone, a phone interview, whatever that might be, that's when that experience needs to start. I think organizations that provide an experience where it's welcoming, that makes people feel comfortable, that can lay out opportunities and what the organization is able to provide to them will win. I also think organizations that have an interview process that is not meant to ask the curveball, crazy questions that throw people off and make them uncomfortable, but allow them to build a relationship and connect will probably win as well. So you mentioned Spotter. Spotter's a staffing firm that we've had for 4 years, and we work in a space where the community is very tight-knit. Our goal is to make sure everybody has a great experience, regardless of whether or not they're working for us, because at some point we may end up working together in the future. So I think that experience thing is a big deal, and it starts early and often.
Yeah. And when it comes to making that informed hiring decision, I think we all at some level rely on our gut feeling and just the impression the candidate makes with you. But setting that to the side, what data is being used today to kind of help in that process? Is there any particular data-driven informed processes that you could recommend?
Yeah, the gut feeling can be a troublesome one to go off of when you're hiring. And hiring itself, I believe hiring itself, you can't be perfect. If you look at even some of the most well-run organizations in the United States, and probably across the world, but the United States, whether it's scouts for some of the top NFL teams or the process that individuals go through to become a Navy SEAL, they're going through a very extensive screening process. So the fact that they put on that type of process and aren't perfect themselves, I don't think we can expect to be perfect. However, going off gut can make it harder on us. There's a ton of tools out there these days. There's personality assessments. There's different organizations that will allow you to do video interviewing so that you can rate people based on a set of criteria versus ultimately, if I was going to advise somebody starting from the ground up, I'd say, hey, you need to start with what are the top 3 skills that they need to have, soft skills they need to have, and top 3 hard skills they need to have. And then how do you create a grading system so that you ask the same question, the same line of questioning to each individual? That way you're going off, to your point, Arnette, you're going off data, not gut feel or instinct. And while you certainly want to take into consideration emotional connection, emotional intelligence, those things that are definitely involved in a conversation. If you can break down a conversation into a grading scale around those top 3 soft skills and top 3 hard skills, you'll probably find yourself to be a little more consistent with hiring. And I think consistency is probably the goal. Perfection is sometimes strived for, but probably not reality.
Yeah. I know all hiring managers will have an occasional crisis that pops up from time to time. Yeah. And a couple of examples, and I'd like to get your perspective on the best way to deal with these, is what do you do on a first day when you've got a no-show, somebody that you spent maybe weeks or months recruiting and then they don't show? But I'd also like to get your perspective on something called catfishing, which frankly is kind of a new concept in this space for me, because I've not personally heard of somebody catfishing an organization where one person is doing the interview, but somebody else shows up. So why don't you share some insight with that?
Yeah, that's a new one to me as well. The no call, no show. Unfortunately, I've had that experience over my years in staffing. The catfish is a new one. I haven't had that, and fortunately, I haven't had a lot of individuals that have had that. That being said, clearly it's something that's going on. For me, if that happened day one, the first thing, you got some probably fires that you're going to put out. Where's the individual?
I pretty much know my response.
Going to probably put some fires out. Beyond that, I think the opportunity is really reflecting on the interview process. There was something missed, whether it was the goals and skills of the individual and how they aligned to the position that you were hiring for, the timeline. There was something in that interview process that led this individual to not show up or to catfish you. And frankly, for the hiring manager, the individual doing hiring, to not catch it. The catfishing thing is an interesting one. Again, I haven't had it. We do meet everybody that starts with Spotter, whether it's for us internally or for our schools, face to face. So Arnette, if I'm seeing you today and I don't see you on Monday when you start, right, that is going to be a pretty quick indicator for, hey, what happened here? And now I need to not only take care of that fire, but then again, I'd go back and consider where I may have missed in my interview process.
Yeah. As we recruit and identify talent that we want to have join our teams, it's, candidates have certain expectations. And I don't know whether it is, you hear a lot of discussion today about generations, like I'm from the boomer generation. So there's a certain quality we bring into a workforce, but different generations bring different expectations to it. So in the last several years, have you seen any expectations that are changing, and what do you think the future holds for us?
Yeah, so I'm a millennial. I'll just throw that out there. I think expectations certainly have changed, and they will continue to change. We've seen inflation go up over the last several months. So you see financial expectations change, comp packages change. We've seen the pandemic that's forced a lot of individuals to work from home, and then individuals start to enjoy working from home. So you've seen that be an expectation. There was a major organization that was on the news last night that talked about having part of their workforce go back in person and the effects that's going to have on their workforce. So I think expectations continue to change. What I don't think has changed is that everybody has goals. and I don't mean to be dramatic with that, but whether you're from the boomer generation or the millennial generation, I would imagine if you and I were having a conversation about your personal and professional goals, you'd have something to say about that, just like I would have something to say about that. So as I'm going through an interview process with somebody, as I'm trying to determine whether or not somebody should join the team or if they're going to want to join the team, that's a very critical part of that conversation. What is the biggest thing you're trying to accomplish in your personal professional life right now? That will help me understand your expectations. And based on that, I can make a better decision on whether or not they're going to be right for the organization. And it's something we can serve long term. So,
yeah. So once an organization has identified a wonderful candidate and they want to move forward with them, we all know that there's a process around due diligence that most companies will undertake. Can you talk a little bit about, what do you see as best practices in that due diligence space? Since we know background screening, pre-employment checks are critical, but they're not the only element. And we know everybody listening would come to S2 Verify for their background screening check. But what do you think are some other components of that bring value to the process?
Certainly. Well, they certainly should go to you for their background screening. Beyond that, I think a critical one, and I hope I don't sound outdated in saying this. I feel like sometimes I may be, but I think reference checks are critical. You sit in a conversation, you and me today, Arnette, and I'm telling you things. Your ability to validate that, to have checks and balances around that conversation are really important. And so having a conversation with a previous hiring manager, having a conversation with a previous coworker, not just the individuals that you may want me to talk to, but the individuals that I need to talk to in order to validate that your skills are going to be a great fit for our organization and allow you to excel in your career. So if I'm looking at maybe a post-offer or even a pre-offer screening, certainly background checks, there's times where drug tests are important, things like that, credentialing, depending on the world you're playing in. But I think those reference checks are kind of across the board something I would be putting time into.
Yeah. So then once you've completed due diligence and you've got that ideal candidate you want to bring in and you believe they're really aligned to advancing the vision you have for the company and all of the strategic plans you have, what do you do when that candidate turns down an offer? What's your recommendations to organizations about how to deal with that?
Yeah. Well, there's probably a moment of freak out, depending on who the individual is. They may have a little bit of a 5 minute of panic or a 5 second of panic. Beyond that, it's a really good question. So I think first evaluating where you're at with that individual. If that individual is still considering an opportunity, maybe right now talent's in demand, so they may have multiple offers and multiple companies pursuing them. There may be a chance for you to continue to understand their goals and better align your organization with them. That being said, I've had experiences. I think about when we first started Spotter, the very first person I made an offer to actually accepted it. And then prior to start date, she called and rescinded her offer. So I've been there. It can be a frustrating moment. Usually, and I'd hate to be a broken record, usually it has something to do with the conversations and the type of due diligence you were doing during the interview process. What types of information were you gathering? Were you hearing what you wanted to hear, or were you hearing reality during the conversation? The example I shared with you when we first started, I was hearing what I wanted to hear. I believed I had the best opportunity in the world for this individual. In a lot of aspects, it probably was. But when you looked at her long-term goals, it wasn't the right fit. And I think if I were to ask a couple more questions, I probably would have realized that earlier on and made better decisions.
Yeah, that's great. So we're going to wind up our conversation today, but I have one final question that I'd like to present to you that I ask all my guests.
Yeah.
So with S2 Verify, if we ran a background screen test on you today, what would be the most surprising discovery?
Oh boy, are you doing that?
No, we're not.
Well, it's a good question. If I asked my wife, she'd probably say I have a lead foot. I like to think I go places with purpose. She thinks sometimes that maybe I'm going a little bit faster than I need to.
That's actually a great response, which is I'm going places with purpose, and that creates
I'll get there with purpose, things to do.
Well, Ryan, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and all the invaluable insight. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody listening did as well. Please let our audience know where they can find you, your website, social media, anything that you think the audience might be looking for. Where would they best track you down?
Certainly, I appreciate it. So it's spotterstaffing.com. We, as you share, we work with school districts in the Illinois and Texas area to find special education staff. Certainly find us there. Also find me on LinkedIn at Ryan Cleaveland.
Yeah. Well, look, you and your best friend Ryan have created an amazing company, and I look forward to following you in the years ahead to see how it goes. And, I'd like to thank all of our audience for listening, watching, or reading. Please tune in to our next episode where I'll be interviewing Sarah Adler. She's the founder and CEO of San Francisco-based Wave, which is an early-stage company offering affordable, high-quality mental health care for everybody. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work, because dreams only work if we do.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.